I always thought love was supposed to be a safe place, a shelter from storms, a harbor when the world turned cruel. At least that's what I believed when I first met him. His smile had the kind of warmth that could melt even the coldest night. And his words, oh, his words, were like silk wrapping around my heart. I was 19, young, foolish, and hungry for affection. He was older, confident, the kind of man who knew how to make a girl feel like she was the only one in the world. For months, I lived in the illusion that I had found the love everyone dreams of. He would hold my hand in public, whisper promises under the stars, and call me his forever. But forever, as I would learn, was just another lie. The first crack appeared when I noticed how often his phone buzzed late at night. He would smile, kiss my forehead, and step out of the room to answer. When I asked, he brushed it off with a laugh. "Just work, baby," he said. "Don't worry about it." And I didn't, at least not at first. I told myself not to be insecure, not to ruin a good thing with suspicion. Love requires trust, doesn't it? That's what he always said. So I trusted. I trusted even when he came home smelling of perfume that wasn't mine. I trusted even when he canceled our dates with flimsy excuses. I trusted because I was terrified of losing him, and I thought loving harder would make him stay. Then came the night that changed everything. I had been feeling sick for weeks. Nausea, dizziness, exhaustion. A missed period confirmed my suspicion. Shaking hands, I bought a pregnancy test, praying silently that it was just my imagination. But when 2 pink lines appeared, I sat on the bathroom floor with tears streaming down my face. I was carrying his child. At first, I was terrified. But then another thought followed. Maybe this will finally make him love me the way I love him. Maybe this will bind us together. When I told him, his reaction wasn't joy. It wasn't shock. It wasn't even fear. It was anger. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted, pacing the room like a caged animal. I thought you'd be happy," I whispered, clutching my trembling hands against my stomach. "Happy? You're ruining my life. Do you have any idea what this means for me?" His words sliced through me like glass. I tried to reason with him, to tell him that we could make it work, that love could survive anything. But his eyes were cold, merciless. "You're just another girl," he spat. "Did you really think you were special? You're not the only one. God, you're pathetic." The truth crashed over me in waves. The late-night phone calls, the perfume, the excuses. There were others. Many others. I wasn't his forever. I was just a convenience. My knees buckled and I sank to the floor. He didn't come to comfort me. He didn't even look guilty. He just grabbed his keys and walked out, leaving me alone with my sobs echoing in the silence. That night, I cried until my chest ached. I cried for the girl who believed in love, for the future I had imagined, for the child growing inside me who would never know the father's affection. And as the hours passed, grief hardened into something else, something darker. A seed of rage began to grow inside me, watered by every lie he had ever told, every kiss that had meant nothing, every promise shattered. But fate wasn't done with me yet. When my family found out I was pregnant, I thought maybe they would support me. Maybe they would hold me the way parents are supposed to. But instead, their faces twisted with shame and disgust. My father's voice thundered through the house. "You've disgraced us. Get out." No amount of begging softened his heart. No tears moved my mother. They turned their backs on me as if I were a stranger. And with nowhere to go, I was thrown into the night, the weight of betrayal pressing on my chest and the cold wind biting my skin. I had lost my lover. I had lost my family. But I hadn't lost myself. Not yet. Deep inside, beneath the pain and humiliation, a fire was kindling. One day, I promised myself, he would pay for what he did. They all would. That was the night the girl who believed in fairy tales died, and the woman who believed in revenge was born. I will never forget the moment the truth about my pregnancy came out. My father's face turned crimson, his fists trembling, his voice echoing like thunder through the house. "You've shamed this family," he roared. "Do you even understand what you've done?" I stood in the middle of the living room, clutching the hem of my shirt, my heart hammering in my chest. My mother's eyes burned with disappointment, sharper than any blade. My younger brother stared at me with a mix of disgust and pity, as though I had become something less than human. I'm sorry, I whispered, though deep inside I knew sorry wouldn't be enough. Please, I didn't mean for this to happen. I thought he loved me. At the mention of him, my father's rage only grew. That bastard! And you, so blind, so stupid. You let yourself be ruined by him. His voice cracked like a whip. There's no place for you here. Not under my roof. My knees weakened. My mother stepped forward, but not to hold me. Not to comfort me. Her hand shot out and struck me across the face, the sting burning into my skin. You will not bring your shame into this house, she said coldly. You've made your bed. Now lie in it. I begged. I pleaded. I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face, clutching at their feet like a child. But their eyes were stone. Their hearts were locked. With a final command, my father ordered me out, and my brother dragged me by the arm, shoving me through the door. The night air was sharp and merciless. The door slammed behind me with a finality that echoed louder than any scream. I was no longer a daughter, no longer a sister, just a stain they wanted erased. I stood barefoot on the cold pavement, the thin fabric of my dress clinging to me as the wind cut through my skin. My belly was still small, only beginning to swell, but I wrapped my arms around it instinctively, as though shielding my unborn child from the cruelty of the world. The streets were empty, lit only by flickering lamps. Every shadow seemed to mock me. Every gust of wind carried whispers of shame. I wandered aimlessly, shivering, my tears mixing with the mist that hung heavy in the air. I tried to find shelter, a bus stop, a closed shop doorway, but the benches were hard, the metal icy beneath me. My stomach churned with hunger, my body trembling with exhaustion. I pulled my knees to my chest, rocking back and forth, whispering softly to the life inside me. It's okay, baby. I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you. I promise. But the truth was, I was terrified. I had nothing. No money, no roof, no one to call. The boy who swore he'd love me forever had abandoned me. My family had discarded me like garbage. And now, here I was, a pregnant girl in the middle of the night, fighting to keep warm against the biting cold. As the hours dragged on, memories played in my mind like cruel theater. His smile, his sweet lies, the way my family used to laugh around the dinner table before everything shattered. I pressed my face into my knees, choking back sobs until the cold forced me to move again. I found myself at the edge of town, near a bridge where the wind howled through the metal beams. Below, the river churned, dark and unforgiving. For a moment, the thought flickered. Maybe I should just let go. Maybe it would be easier. But that night, as the first rays of dawn painted the sky pale gray, I made a vow whispered through cracked lips and shivering teeth. I will not be broken. I will not disappear. One day I'll stand again, and when I do, they'll see the price of betrayal. The girl who had once been naive, foolish, desperate for love, was gone. In her place, a woman was being forged. By pain, by loss, by the freezing cold of that merciless night. And though I had nothing left, I had the one thing they could never take away. The fire inside me. The morning after that bitter night, I woke up stiff and shivering against the wall of the abandoned building. My body ached as if I had been beaten. My lips were cracked, my stomach hollow, and my mind foggy from lack of sleep. But it was the weight inside me, the fragile, growing life that forced me to push myself up. I couldn't afford to give up. Not now. Not when I had someone else depending on me. I wandered the streets aimlessly, my head low, my arms wrapped around my stomach. The world seemed louder, harsher. Cars honked, people rushed past me without a second glance, and I realized for the first time how invisible suffering can be. I was a girl on the edge of collapse, but to them, I was just another stranger to ignore. By noon, hunger clawed at me so fiercely that I couldn't walk straight. I stopped near a bakery, the smell of fresh bread torturing me. Inside, people laughed, bought pastries, carried bags of food with ease. My throat tightened as I pressed my forehead against the cold glass. I wanted to scream, to beg for even a crumb. Instead, I pulled myself away, ashamed of the desperation I felt. At the park nearby, I sat on a bench, clutching my stomach. My mind screamed questions. Where will I go? How will I survive? How do I raise a child when I can't even feed myself? Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Crying didn't feed the hungry. Crying didn't build shelter. Crying wouldn't save me. That's when I noticed an old woman feeding pigeons on the other side of the park. She glanced at me once, her eyes narrowing, then looked away. A moment later, she shuffled toward me with a paper bag. Without a word, she placed it in my lap. I blinked at her, confused. Inside was half a loaf of bread and a small bottle of water. "You look like you need it more than I do," she muttered, then walked away before I could even thank her. It wasn't much, but to me, it was salvation. I tore into the bread with shaking hands, savoring every dry bite as if it were a feast. The water washed down the ache in my throat. For the first time in days, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could keep going. But survival was never simple. Nights were the worst. The cold crept into my bones, and every sound, footsteps, distant shouts, car horns, felt like a threat. I learned to sleep in short bursts, always half awake, clutching my belly protectively. More than once, men passed by, their eyes lingering too long, their smirks filled with malice. I kept my head down, praying they would leave me alone. Days blurred into weeks. I scavenged for food where I could. Half-eaten sandwiches tossed in bins, scraps from market stalls, kindness from the rare stranger. My body weakened, but my will grew sharper. I learned quickly, trust no one, rely on no one. The world had already shown me its cruelty. And yet, every time I thought about giving up, I felt the faint flutter inside me. My child, my reason to endure. When I placed my hand against my belly and felt the tiniest movement, something stirred in me, a fierce protective fire. I began to imagine a future, fragile but defiant. A future where my child would never know the kind of betrayal I had faced. A future where we would rise above this misery. But to build that future, I needed strength. I needed to fight. So I looked for work. Of course, no one wanted to hire a homeless, visibly pregnant girl with no experience. Doors shut in my face. People sneered, whispered, judged. Irresponsible, trash, whore. The words stung, but they no longer broke me. I wore them like scars, visible reminders of the world's cruelty. Finally, I found a small cafe owned by a tired-looking man who took pity on me. He let me wash dishes for a few hours each day in exchange for meals and a little money. It wasn't much, but it kept me alive. I swallowed my pride as soap stung my hands and my back ached from bending, but every plate I scrubbed was a step away from the girl who had once been weak. At night, I returned to the abandoned building, clutching my small earnings, whispering to my child about the life I would give them. I spoke softly into the darkness. One day we'll have a home. One day you'll go to school, you'll laugh, you'll never feel alone like I did. And one day we'll show them all, the ones who left us, the one who betrayed us, that we are stronger than they ever imagined. Each word hardened my resolve. As the months passed, I grew heavier with pregnancy, but also heavier with determination. My face hollowed, my hands cracked from work, but my eyes, when I caught my reflection in the cafe window, burned with something new. Not just pain, not just survival, but purpose. I started keeping a journal, scribbling late into the night on scraps of paper. I wrote down every memory of him, the lies, the affairs, the moment he rejected me. I wrote down every word my parents had hurled at me. I wrote down every night of hunger, every tear I had swallowed. Page by page, I built a record of betrayal and pain, not to wallow in it, but to remember, to never forget what they had done to me, because I knew, deep in my bones, that revenge was coming. Not the impulsive kind, not a scream, not a slap, not even a cry for attention. No, my revenge would be slow, patient, and devastating. I would rise so high that when I struck, the fall for them would be all the greater, and as my child's kicks grew stronger, so did my vow. That was the paradox of my suffering. The world thought it was breaking me, but it was making me unbreakable. The girl who once begged for love was gone. In her place was a mother, a fighter, a woman who had walked through hell and lived. And one day soon, I promised myself I would return. Not as the abandoned girl they left to freeze in the night, but as the storm they never saw coming. Time became my ally. When my daughter was born, tiny, furious, perfect, I rebuilt myself for her. Sleepless nights, odd jobs, secondhand clothes stitched by hand, all of it became fuel. I swore she would have both safety and justice. People expected me to disappear, but I refused. I studied law, media, influence. I kept records, gathered stories, and sharpened my voice until it could cut. The girl who once slept on concrete became a woman who could command a room. At a local paper, I started small, then found my way into writing columns. My words grew bolder. First about small injustices, then about betrayal. Quietly, I saved money, raised my daughter, and collected evidence. Messages, receipts, other women's testimonies. They became nails in the coffin of his carefully polished image. Revenge would not be petty, it would be precise. I attacked in 3 ways: legal pressure, child support demands, and official accountability he couldn't dodge. Financial cost. Coordinated complaints from women and colleagues chipped away at his promotions and investors. Public truth, an investigative piece, meticulous and undeniable, that exposed every lie he had lived behind. The article spread like fire. Screens lit up with proof. Affairs, promises, duplicity. Employers pulled back. Invitations vanished. Charities cut ties. His polished statements of misunderstanding fell flat against undeniable receipts. The women he had fooled stood with me, visible and unashamed. Together we demanded accountability, stripping him of the one thing that had shielded him: silence. Even my family, who once cast me out, now watched from the sidelines in uneasy silence. Their shame was its own justice. The crescendo came at a gala, his favorite stage. When asked publicly about the allegations, his smile cracked. Screens showed proof, whispers filled the room, and his mask slipped in front of the cameras. Overnight, the man who had once thrived on charm became a liability everyone abandoned. I did not gloat. Revenge wasn't triumph, it was clean air after illness. He had lost the life he built on lies. I had built one on truth. Revenge is a strange thing. People imagine it like a fire, raging, loud, all-consuming. But for me, when the final chapter came, it wasn't fire. It was ice. Clear, cold, sharp. The chance for face-to-face confrontation came unexpectedly. I was at the courthouse for another hearing about child support. He had been dodging payments, trying to wriggle out with excuses about financial hardship, though everyone knew he still lived in a loft and drove his sleek car. When I walked into the corridor, there he was. Thinner, tired, his suit rumpled, his confidence gone. For a moment, memories collided. The nights he whispered promises under stars, the day he spat that I was just another girl, the night he left me sobbing on the floor. My stomach turned, but not with weakness, with clarity. He glanced up and froze. His eyes widened, as if he were seeing a ghost. Then came the sneer. "So, you're still dragging this out? Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough?" I looked him dead in the eyes. My voice didn't shake. "The only one embarrassed here is you. And we both know it." For the first time, I watched his smirk falter. He opened his mouth to retort, but nothing came. He turned away, adjusting his collar, pretending to check his phone. That silence was my victory. Later, inside the courtroom, the judge scolded him for his behavior, ordered stricter enforcement of the payments. He tried to argue, but his voice cracked, his papers unorganized. Once he had been so smooth, so unflappable. Now he looked like a man unraveling. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I had already won. When the session ended, I walked past him with my head high. For years, I had dreamed of screaming at him, of making him feel even a fraction of what I had endured. But standing there, strong with my daughter waiting for me outside, I realized the truth. The greatest revenge wasn't the ruin of his name. It was my survival. It was the life I had built from ashes, the dignity he could never steal. I stepped out of the courthouse into the sunlight, and there she was. My daughter, her backpack slung over her shoulder, her smile wide as she ran to me. She didn't care about courtrooms, scandals, or ruined reputations. She cared that her mother was there, steady and unbroken. As I hugged her, I whispered, "We're free." And in that moment, I felt it. For years, those pages had fueled me, reminded me of why I fought. But as I looked at them now, I realized the book didn't hold me anymore. I picked up a pen and wrote the final words. I survived. I avenged. I became. Then I closed it for the last time. The past was no longer my chain. It was my armor. The cold night, the betrayals, the hunger. They had shaped me into someone stronger than I ever thought I could be. And though revenge had been my fire, it wasn't my future. My future was my daughter's laughter, my work, the women who found shelter in the home I had built. As I turned off the lamp, I whispered one last vow, not to him, not to my family, but to myself. I am not the girl you broke. I am the woman you created, and I will never be broken again. And in the silence of that room, I knew the story was no longer about what I had lost. It was about what I had become.